You're not going to believe what they did to me, but if you've ever had someone smile in your face just to break you behind your back, then you'll understand the kind of pain I've lived through. Before I tell you how I got revenge for everything they did, please subscribe to the channel. These stories are more than drama. They're true, they're raw, and they might just give someone out there the strength to finally fight back. Now, let me take you into the life I never chose, and the lies that stole it from me. For the first 22 years of my life, I truly believed I was Emma Wilson, a nobody born into a family that barely tolerated me, let alone loved me. I lived in a half-rotting house on the far edge of a forgotten Ohio town, the kind of place where the air always felt damp, where the neighbors never made eye contact, and where children like me were expected to keep their heads down and their mouths shut. Carol Wilson, the woman I called Mom, was never the type to show warmth or affection. Her love, if you could even call it that, came in the form of constant complaints, cruel jabs, and occasional slaps across the face when I didn't move fast enough. She had a permanent scowl etched onto her face, like smiling would physically hurt her. She always made it clear that I was a burden, something she'd been forced to drag through life when she already had too many problems of her own. I can still hear her voice some days, sharp and bitter, as if it was carved from broken glass. You should be grateful I kept you. You'd be dead in a ditch without me. But even Carol's bitterness couldn't compete with her real daughter, Jade Wilson, my so-called sister. If you met Jade in public, you'd probably think she was charming. She had this fake, sugary way of talking to strangers, always smiling with her perfect white teeth, always laughing like she was just happy to be alive. People used to say things like, "She's such a sweetheart," and "What a pretty girl you're raising, Carol." They didn't see what happened behind closed doors. Jade was cruel in a calculated way, like someone who enjoyed peeling wings off butterflies just to see what would happen. When we were little, she'd blame me for things she broke, and Carol never questioned it. The belt always came out, and I always took the fall. As we got older, Jade only got worse. She broke things I loved just to watch me suffer, humiliated me in front of the few friends I managed to make at school, and reminded me almost daily that I didn't belong anywhere, especially not in their house. I still remember one winter when I was 15. I had saved up lunch money for weeks, skipping meals just so I could buy this cheap little music player I saw at a gas station store. It wasn't much, just a plastic thing that barely worked, but it was mine. It was the first thing I'd ever bought for myself. When Jade found it, she didn't yell. She just looked at me, smiled, and threw it into the toilet. "Trash doesn't get nice things," she said, walking away like it was nothing. I wasn't allowed to question anything. I wasn't allowed to have dreams. I wasn't even allowed to keep my paycheck once I turned 16 and got a job at the local diner. Carol would wait by the door on Fridays, snatch the envelope from my hand, and remind me that she was feeding me out of pity. From the outside, it looked like I was just another poor girl from a broken home. But deep down, even when I was too scared to say it out loud, I always felt something wasn't right. There was a voice in my head, quiet at first, but growing louder each year, telling me that I didn't belong in that house. It wasn't just emotional abuse. It was something deeper. Like my soul was constantly reaching for something I'd never known, something I had lost a long time ago but couldn't remember. Sometimes, late at night, I would dream about a woman brushing my hair gently, humming a soft melody I'd never heard before in real life. I could smell lavender in the dream, something floral and calming, something Carol would never allow in her house. I used to wake up crying, not knowing why. Those memories felt real, but they didn't belong to the life I was living. Then, everything changed. It happened 2 weeks after my 22nd birthday. Not that anyone acknowledged it. Carol tossed me a shopping list and told me to stop sulking like a spoiled brat. That morning, she and Jade left for the day, probably to go visit some new guy Jade was trying to trick into buying her fake nails and cheap perfume. I was alone in the house for the first time in weeks. That was when I noticed the attic door was cracked open. It was strange because Carol was obsessive about locking everything. I don't know what made me walk up there. Curiosity, maybe. Or maybe something deeper. Something pulling me toward the truth. The attic was cold and filled with dust, like no one had touched anything in years. Boxes were piled high, some half collapsed, others sealed with duct tape. Most of it looked like trash. I was about to turn around and leave when I saw a small metal filing box wedged behind a stack of broken picture frames. It had no lock, just a snap latch, slightly rusted. I opened it. Inside was a thick manila envelope, brittle with age. On the front was a handwritten label. E. Whitmore, 2003. The second I saw my first initial and a name I didn't recognize, something inside me stopped. My breath caught. My hands were shaking as I slowly opened it. What I found inside shattered me. A flyer. Faded, but still legible. A missing persons flyer. There was a photo of a baby girl with dark curls and big eyes, smiling at the camera. Name: Emma Whitmore AG. 11 months missing since September 18th, 2003. Last seen in Boston, Massachusetts. Suspected abduction. Please contact authorities with any information. It felt like the floor had vanished beneath me. That baby, it was me. I recognized the dimple on her left cheek, the shape of her eyes, even the faint scar on her chin from when I fell off a chair as a toddler. But how? Why was this in Carol's attic? I kept digging through the envelope, frantic now. There were more documents, a hospital bracelet with the name Whitmore Emma, a grainy photo of a young couple holding a baby, a newspaper clipping titled, Boston couple offers $250,000 reward for missing infant daughter. I didn't understand. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened with panic. My stomach twisted with nausea. I wasn't Emma Wilson. I was Emma Whitmore, and I had been kidnapped. I ran back to my room, locked the door, and spread the papers across my bed like I was solving some horrific crime, which, in a way, I was. I sat there for hours, staring at the pieces of my stolen life. I looked up the name online, Gregory and Helen Whitmore, and within seconds, I found their story. They were still looking for me. There were interviews, photos, charity fundraisers for missing children, all wrapped around their desperate search for the daughter who vanished from her crib 21 years ago. That daughter was me. They were my real parents. And Carol Wilson, the woman who beat me, screamed at me, and stole every ounce of happiness I ever had, was a kidnapper, a liar, a criminal. I don't remember falling asleep. I think I just passed out from shock. When I woke up, it was dark outside. Carol and Jade were home. I could hear them downstairs laughing, probably watching some trashy reality show, completely unaware that their little secret had just blown wide open. But I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. I needed to get out. Fast. Before they realized I knew the truth. Before they had the chance to cover it up. Or worse, silence me. I packed what little I had. The documents. The flyer. A toothbrush. A jacket. I didn't care about clothes or money. I just needed to leave. The next morning, before the sun was even up, I walked to the bus station and bought a one-way ticket to Boston using the cash I'd hidden inside an old sock drawer. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to start over. Enough to go home. And enough to make sure that the people who had stolen everything from me would finally answer for what they did. Let them smile now. Because the next time they see me, I won't be the scared little girl they used to control. If you have ever imagined what it would feel like to finally step into the life you were meant to have, to meet the parents who searched for you relentlessly and the home you were stolen from so many years ago, then you might begin to understand the overwhelming mix of hope, fear, and disbelief I experienced the moment I arrived in Boston. The city was a stark contrast to the quiet and dusty streets of my Ohio hometown, its towering buildings and ceaseless noise both intimidating and oddly exhilarating to me, as if the bustling crowd could wash away the darkness that had clung to me for so long. After I had taken the bus from that bleak place I once called home, the address I found for the Whitmore family led me to a stately brownstone house nestled on a quiet, leafy street. One that could have belonged in a storybook, far removed from the decay I had escaped. As I stood there, my heart pounding with a wild mixture of hope and terror, I found myself unable to move for what felt like an eternity, simply staring at the brass nameplate near the door that bore the name I was finally ready to claim as my own, Whitmore. When the door finally opened, I was greeted by a woman whose face was etched with both exhaustion and warmth, her eyes wide with a cautious curiosity as they searched mine for something, recognition, perhaps, or a sign that this stranger claiming to be her daughter was truly the little girl she had lost so long ago. Her voice trembled as she whispered my name, Emma? And at that moment, all the barriers I had built around my fragile heart crumbled, sending me tumbling into tears as I collapsed onto the stoop, overwhelmed by a wave of emotion I had never allowed myself to feel before. She wrapped me in her arms with a tenderness I had never known existed, her hands trembling as she gently brushed my hair away from my face and kissed my forehead with a desperation that spoke of years of unanswered prayers and unbearable loss. This woman was Helen Whitmore, my real mother, and the safety I felt in her embrace was unlike anything I had ever experienced, a balm to wounds I had believed would never heal. Over the next hours, the Whitmore house slowly transformed from an unfamiliar place into a sanctuary filled with tears, stories, and the painstakingly slow rebuilding of a life ripped away from me. Helen called her husband Gregory, who arrived moments later and collapsed to his knees at the sight of me, his hands trembling as he cupped my face with a reverence that made me feel like the most precious thing in the world. His voice was thick with emotion as he confessed how they had searched for me every single day, never once giving up hope that one day they would bring me home. They showed me my old bedroom, untouched by time, the pale walls adorned with faded drawings and childhood toys that belonged to a version of me I had never known. Sitting there, surrounded by these silent reminders of a life stolen from me, I felt a mixture of loss and hope intertwining in my chest, the bitter taste of years spent in darkness mingling with the possibility of finally belonging somewhere. Helen made tea with hands that trembled so badly they nearly spilled the cup, and Gregory wasted no time in contacting a lawyer and a private investigator, determined to uncover the truth and bring justice for the nightmare I had endured. I sat quietly, overwhelmed by a tide of emotions I could barely contain, as the pieces of my fractured life began to fit together in a way I had only dared to imagine in my darkest dreams. As the days passed, my new reality settled around me like a fragile cocoon, woven with love and kindness, but still tinged with the raw ache of betrayal. I started to laugh again, genuine laughter that surprised me, and for the first time, I let someone brush my hair before bed, without flinching. But just as I began to believe that healing was possible, the past crept back in with the subtlety of a serpent. It began with a message on my phone, a simple text that carried with it all the venom of a life I was trying desperately to leave behind. Emma, it read, "It's Jade. I heard what happened.
I'm sorry.
Please don't shut me out. I want to talk." Reading those words sent a chill through me, a reminder that the people who had stolen my life were not ready to let go without a fight. Jade, the girl who had tormented me for years under the guise of sisterhood, was reaching out with a smile that I knew hid teeth sharpened by cruelty and greed. Despite the flood of anger and mistrust swelling inside me, I decided not to block her number. I needed to know what she wanted, to hear the lies straight from her mouth, to understand the depth of her deception. Our conversations were cautious at first, a delicate dance of half-truths and false remorse. Jade spoke of confusion and regret, painting herself as a victim of Carol's manipulations, trying desperately to convince me that she still considered me her sister despite everything. Her words dripped with insincerity, but there was a disturbing charm in the way she twisted reality, making it almost believable if you ignored the history of pain she represented. Against my better judgment, I let her come to Boston. The day she arrived, I found myself walking a thin line between suspicion and the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, she had changed. I let her stay in the guest room, shared meals with her, and allowed her to move freely within the house, all the while watching her carefully, reading the subtle shifts in her expression and the calculated moves she made as she settled into this new stage of her deceit. It didn't take long for the facade to crack. Jade's interest in my parents' finances grew obvious, as did her envy for the life I was beginning to build, a life she had tried so hard to destroy. She began to probe for weaknesses, asking pointed questions about my job prospects and the support network I had, all while casting doubts in Helen's mind about my stability and emotional state. One day, my carefully prepared portfolio, which was meant to secure me an interview at a prestigious design firm, a stepping stone to the future I had dreamed of, mysteriously disappeared. Jade claimed ignorance with a smirk barely hidden behind tears, but I knew better. Her sabotage didn't stop there. She spilled red wine on the expensive carpet in the guest room, an act so petty and vindictive it could only have been designed to unsettle me. She stole clothes from my closet, turning my own home into a battleground where I was constantly on edge, unsure of what would be taken or ruined next. She even went so far as to flirt with an intern at my father's law firm, weaving herself into the family's professional circle like a spider spinning a web of manipulation. The final blow came when I discovered that $6,000 in emergency savings had vanished from the office drawer, money I had painstakingly saved for my future, stolen in the dead of night by the person I once called a sister. Jade left without a trace, no goodbye, no explanation, just an empty room filled with the echo of betrayal. When I confronted her over the phone, her laughter was cold and merciless. "You really thought you could walk into that rich life and keep me out?" she sneered. "You owe me, Emma. You wouldn't be anything without us." Those words cut deeper than any slap or insult I had endured. She was right in a way. I did owe them. I owed them years of stolen childhood, years of pain and silence. But I would never let those debts chain me again. That night, I sat alone in the quiet darkness, not with tears, but with a fierce resolve burning in my chest. Jade had returned not just to hurt me, but to try and take everything I had finally begun to reclaim. She had smiled while breaking me, but this time, I was ready to fight back. If you're listening to this because you know what it's like to be betrayed by those who pretend to love you, to be crushed under the weight of fake smiles and hidden knives, then you're not alone. This channel is a place for survivors, for those who refuse to be silent or broken. Hit subscribe now, because together, our voices will become the strongest force against the lies and cruelty that try to keep us down. I told Helen everything. I spilled every detail of Jade's manipulations, the theft, the sabotage, the lies. Gregory didn't hesitate when I showed him the messages and the evidence. Without a word of doubt, he declared, "It's time to stop running. It's time to make them pay." From that moment, the Whitmore family transformed from victims to warriors, united in a mission to reclaim justice and end the nightmare Jade and Carol had unleashed on me. We began gathering evidence, contacting the police, and preparing for the battle ahead, knowing that this time I would no longer be a silent victim but a fierce force demanding the truth be exposed and the past finally put to rest. After enduring years of suffering, heartbreak, and a silence so oppressive that it seemed to consume every fiber of my being, I finally arrived at a point where the only option left was to seek justice, not just for myself, but for every stolen moment of my life. The path ahead was daunting, but I was no longer alone. My real family, the Whitmores, stood firmly by my side, their unwavering support a beacon of strength that fueled my determination to confront the darkness that had overshadowed my existence for far too long. What followed was an exhaustive, relentless effort to collect every shred of evidence that would expose the full extent of the cruelty and deception inflicted upon me. My parents spared no expense in hiring the best private investigators and legal experts to unravel the twisted web Carol Wilson had spun. These professionals dove deep into archives, uncovered financial irregularities, tracked phone records, and interviewed neighbors and acquaintances, painstakingly assembling a comprehensive case that would leave no room for doubt or excuse. The investigation revealed horrifying truths that extended far beyond my personal experience. Carol Wilson was not merely a harsh and abusive guardian. She was the mastermind behind a string of child abductions that spanned years. The cruelty of this revelation shook me to my core, but it also explained so much. Her obsession with control, the pattern of replacing one stolen child with another, and her complete disregard for the lives she shattered. Perhaps the most shocking revelation of all was the truth about Jade Wilson. The girl who had bullied, sabotaged, and stolen from me was not even Carol's biological daughter. She, like me, had been taken from her original family under circumstances equally as tragic and twisted. This knowledge redefined everything I thought I understood about my so-called sister. Jade was not an ally or a blood relative. She was another victim trapped in Carol's brutal machinery of control and deceit, forced to act as an accomplice in the very horrors I had suffered. As the investigation unfolded, the weight of years of silence lifted, replaced by a fierce desire to see justice served. Law enforcement moved swiftly, and both Carol and Jade were arrested amid a storm of media attention and public outrage. Watching them handcuffed and taken away was surreal. The once imperious matriarch who had ruled my life with fear and intimidation was reduced to a frightened woman, stripped of power and dignity. Jade, too, faced the consequences of her actions, though it was clear to me that her culpability was shadowed by years of manipulation and abuse at Carol's hands. The courtroom became the arena in which I reclaimed my voice and my life. Sitting there among reporters, lawyers, and strangers who had followed my story, I felt an unshakable resolve. This was no longer about a girl who had been stolen and abused. This was about a woman standing tall against those who sought to destroy her. I recounted every detail, the abuse, the lies, the theft, and the profound betrayal, not as a victim begging for mercy, but as a survivor demanding accountability. Each word I spoke echoed with the power of years of silenced pain. The courtroom was heavy with emotion, and I could see the faces of those listening shift from disbelief to empathy and respect. I wasn't just telling my story. I was giving voice to countless others whose suffering remained hidden in shadows, who longed for the justice that had so long eluded me. The judge's verdict was definitive. Carol Wilson was sentenced to decades in prison, her crimes spanning kidnapping, abuse, and fraud leaving no room for leniency. Jade's sentence, though lighter, still reflected her participation in the destructive actions that had torn my life apart. Their fall from grace served as a stark reminder that justice, while often delayed, can never be denied indefinitely. Yet the courtroom victory, while monumental, was only one part of my healing. The true triumph was the freedom I reclaimed, a freedom to live without fear, without the constant shadow of those who had tried to control me. I reconnected with my younger brother, who had grown up hearing stories of the sister he never met. Our bond was immediate and powerful, grounded in shared loss but blossoming into hope for a future built on love and truth. With my family's unwavering support, I began rebuilding the life stolen from me. The dream I had once thought lost, of a meaningful career and a future filled with possibility, became tangible when I secured a position at the design firm that had once felt like an impossible goal. Every day spent at work was a step further away from the pain of my past, and a step closer to the life I was meant to live. But I knew my journey didn't end there. I refused to let my story be just about survival. I wanted it to be about transformation, about empowerment, about helping others find their own strength. I founded a support group for survivors of kidnapping and familial abuse, determined that my experience would not only bring justice to my abusers, but also offer hope and healing to others trapped in silence. Standing here now, reflecting on the path from a stolen child to a woman who took back control of her destiny, I want to tell anyone who has ever felt powerless or unheard that your past does not define you. No matter how dark your history, no matter how long the road, you have the strength within you to fight back, to speak out, and to claim the life you deserve. If you have found even a glimmer of hope in my story, if you believe in the power of resilience and justice, I urge you to subscribe to this channel. Here, we build a community of survivors whose voices rise above the pain, who transform their suffering into strength, and who refuse to be broken by those who seek to harm them. My name is Emma Whitmore. Though they tried to erase me, to break me, and to keep me invisible. I stand here now, stronger, louder, and more determined than ever to live the life that was always meant to be mine. And I promise you this, I will never stop fighting, not for myself, and not for anyone still waiting for their own justice to come.